Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yet another episode of the Whitepill. Apologies for the absence, but I've been sick. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice still, but I've been sick for the last couple of days. But we are back at it. With more white pills. I guess I don't know. Today's gonna be not a lot of white pills today. I'll be honest, guys. It's not looking too good out there these days. Um, But in any case, before we get into any of that, the convoy episode that we've been meaning to wrap up this series with my co-host, Mr. Fireside Talks, it will premiere this Wednesday. We'll be streaming around 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so stay tuned for that. We'll be covering all the trials and all the legal ramifications of the convoy, how it ended, and where that leaves us now. And for today's episode, however, we are going to be just lightly touching on the Iran war. Quick little update on where the conflict stands and what it means for where we are, and where it could possibly be going. Now, I'm no Nostradamus, but it's not looking good. It is not looking good, to say the least. The markets almost had a meltdown yesterday because of fluctuating gas prices. The Japanese economy, I think, or the South Korean stock market had to be halted like 20 minutes in. In any case, yeah, we'll be talking about that. And also, more importantly, MAiD, the medically assisted medical assistance in death program that we have here in Canada, which is essentially just state sanctioned, or rather state sponsored suicide. We are on track this year to reach our 100,000th death by medically assisted suicide in Canada, which is nothing short of extraordinary. And I don't mean extraordinary in the good way. I mean in the way that kind of just makes you shake your head that this is where we're at as a country, where we decide to fund, I'm assuming, millions of dollars to support this kind of program through taxpayers, so we have no chance of opting out of any of this. We're sponsoring for people to essentially kill themselves. And you might think that, okay, well, if you're at end of life care, if you are in any way like a paraplegic or a cancer patient, then sure, this is kind of an ideal out, I guess, to be surrounded by friends and family, or at least go in a painless way. But there's a lot more to it. Okay, it's actually a lot more, like, to use the left's term, problematic than people think. It's not just being used for that. There have been multiple instances where this program has been abused, and we'll be covering all of that. But in any case, if you want to support the show, just ideally just watch on Rumble. That's my main platform. That's where we're at. But if you want to financially support the show, in the meantime, we're not accepting any fiat donations. It's crypto only until we have that set up. The link for which can be found, the first link there at the bio.link/whitepill page. Link is in the description of every episode, so head on there if you want to check it out. There's also a tip button on every video on Rumble if you use Rumble Wallet. You can also use that if you'd like. There's also a Proton referral link if you'd like to use Proton, whether it's for the Drive or the VPN or even their mail service. There should be a link in the description of every episode, and also a Rumble referral link that you can use to sign up. Yeah, not much else to say beyond that. No new additions to the list this time around. Might have some more stuff next episode, but in any case, let's get into the war, I guess. Look, as it stands right now, as I said in the last episode, the only reason that this war is happening, the only reason that it's allowed to go on as far as it has, is because America is intrinsically tied to the Israel lobby. The American political machine is, without a doubt, compromised by the Israel lobby, whether it's through AIPAC or other undue influence. And so throughout these years, they've been positioning themselves to make this invasion, or rather this war, all but inevitable. Because the American people don't want it. They certainly didn't vote for it. In fact, Trump ran, right, as I've said before, Trump ran on the fact that he would not push America into another needless war, right, the likes of which we've seen for the last 20 plus odd years, right, this whole quagmire in the Middle East that they've tied themselves to, the retreat in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq, Syria, Libya, all that, right? And yet they're still doing it. And not only are they still doing it, not only is the operation a go, now it's gotten to a point where it's gotten all too real for the administration. You know, to the point where Trump, when the markets were open yesterday, was saying that the Iran war is all but a foregone conclusion, that it's only a matter of time, and that it might as well already be won with the amount of damage they've done. But that really doesn't seem to be the case, because they said that we were supposed to be in for a 3-day military intervention mission, whatever language they're using to call it now. And now we're in day, 11? We're in day 11. Just like 2 weeks to stop the spread. Just like COVID. Just like COVID. They're using the exact same talking points. Some people are calling it a war. Some people are calling it military intervention. Their PR on this war is just all over the place. Like, there is absolutely no single line of communication. It seems as though people are just saying whatever. It's so disorienting, the whole thing. Right? And once again, the central point of all this, right? The main issue at hand here is that this war is yet another reminder that public sentiment, public opinion on these things matters absolutely, well, does not matter in any significant way. It doesn't matter, right? In the last years or so, in the last couple of years, the overtone window has shifted to the point where now leftism and leftists, right, are seen not as necessarily the enemy, though they are, but that all these things that we've gotten so comfortable with the woke left, right, they're no longer mainstream positions for people to take. There's still quite a few in that vanguard that are still trying to press their advantage, right? But at the end of the day, there has been a considerable rise of people that have joined the right wing, or that have been, rather, shoved into it. Right? More people have woken up to not only the issues of mass migration, right, deportation, illegal immigrants, migrant labor, all those kind of things, right? And also the influence that Israel has over America. But it's meant absolutely nothing. Because the one guy that was elected, the one presidential candidate that was elected on this platform, right, to push out the left, to bring in more right-wing ideas that people are openly embracing, right? Trump, the whole anti-establishment, drain the swamp, build the wall candidate, all of that energy that was amassed in this movement has now just been directed towards the Iran war. Right, once again, Epstein files not released. In fact, now they're actually actively deleting them, apparently. There was an account that I started following yesterday that's actually keeping track of this. Let me see if I can pull them up. Like, they're real-time monitoring how many files have been removed, how many have been deleted. It's an account by the name of EpsteinFury.net. You can find him on Twitter. I mean, like, straight up just removing the files. The wall hasn't been built. The mass deportation numbers still have yet to be released since Biden left office. So none of the things that Trump ran on, none of the things that he actually advocated for are coming to fruition. Instead, we're in a new war, and by we, I mean North America, because our fate is inextricably tied to the United States. Right, the royal we. Now we find ourselves in this conflict, which, once again, who does it benefit? Certainly doesn't seem to be benefiting America. A conflict an ocean away? To what purpose? Iran is not a regional threat to America. There is an entire ocean separating them. What reason do they have to go in? And once again, when people say, right, in response to this, oh, well, what about their nuclear program? What about their ballistic missile program? Right, the same program that they supposedly, not necessarily nullified, but kneecapped, right, cut it at the knees, only last year with their strikes. So which one is it? It's either their program is disabled for the time being, or that they're an imminent threat. You can't have both. You can't have it both ways here. And the interesting thing that I've noticed, where are the mass protests for this? Right? Do you notice that every single time there's some kind of a cause, literally the next day, people are mobilized with pre-printed signs and slogans to shout? And I've covered this on the show before. The reason that exists is because of the astroturfing. These protests are paid protests. People are paid to show up with these picket signs. I mean, we saw immediately as soon as Venezuela, that when they had that not the invasion, but the military operation in Venezuela, as soon as that completed, right, literally the next day, you had people in Times Square with these picket signs ready to go. I mean, within less than 24 hours of this operation happening, you already had people protesting on the ground. And where is that for this war? Where is the overnight movement? Right, there's been little to no action on the streets for people that are against this. Yeah, you've seen protests, especially in Toronto. All these Iranians, the 100,000, however many came out to protest in support of it. Which, look, whatever you make of that, that's a whole other aside. But where is that on the other side? Where are the actual protests of people that are against this? We haven't seen any of that. No significant movement, no march on the Capitol Hill, nothing. Right? And more importantly, where's the media on this? Why aren't they punishing the administration? Right? These people whose role it is to speak truth to power, it's as if their hands are tied. And that's because, in part, they're complicit. They're tentatively supporting this conflict because they know that it'll get them ratings, and they don't want to speak out against the state for one reason or another. But it's literally their job to do this. It's their job to go out and say, hey, isn't it kind of strange how Donald Trump's entire platform, maybe not entire platform, but a good chunk of it was built on the fact that we need to stop these endless wars, we need to stop these conflicts, we can't have a war with Iran, and yet they're just dead silent on it. Dead silent. Right? And once again, only the moment that the price of gas was going to fluctuate extremely did Trump actually say something and try to back off. Right? And only then did the media start pressing the story. It's only then. And as I mentioned before, his flip-flopping with the market, yesterday when the market was open, he was saying that the war is almost, might as well be a foregone conclusion. It might as well be over with the amount of damage they've done. That the war will be over soon. But then once the market closed, he went on even further to say that it would be a definitive victory, an unconditional surrender. The last time that we saw a nation conduct an unconditional surrender, right, a surrender for which there's no conditions, you can do whatever you want to us. The last time we saw that was World War II with Germany and Japan. I could be wrong about Japan, but Germany certainly. Right? And that came as a result of the nukes and the total ground invasion that they had. that the Allies had conducted. Are we prepared to see the same, if not a bigger scale, of loss and destruction as our forefathers did during the Second World War? Are we prepared to see that kind of unconditional surrender? Is this what we're after? Because America's not going to retreat. If they did, it would be even more catastrophic. Now it just galvanizes that entire region against America, even more so than before. So the only way is through. Now the question is, right, the only question is, how far are they actually willing to go with this? To what end will this war continue? What is the actual defining line when it will end? We don't know. We don't know. We're getting mixed messages from the administration. And realistically, there is nothing else in the realm of politics right now that matters more than this conflict. This is of the utmost importance and should be at the forefront of everyone's mind, at the least in North America. Okay, this is the ultimate thread that connects us all. Are we willing to continue these conflicts, these quagmires that we somehow just seem to get ourselves into? Just somehow we seem to get ourselves into them. Are we willing to continue down that path into the 21st century? Are we willing to sacrifice our sons and daughters in the same way that we've done for the last 20 years? And that doesn't involve just America, it's all the allies too. Canada now says that we're not ruling out sending ground forces, we're not ruling out military action. I guess they're waiting to use it as some pawn in the trade talks, I guess. I don't know. Like I really don't understand what the vision is here. Because look, Canada's stance is laughable, as I said before. And also wasted opportunity. Like, if we actually had any leverage to do something, right, to pressure Trump on this, we would have done it already. But we can't, because Canada right now is fundamentally a weak nation. So all we can do is just say some pretty words and make condemnations, but we're not in a position to do anything. It is in no way up to Canada or Canadians what happens now. That's between America and its own people. Those are the only people that can actually put any pressure on the administration. Nothing that Canada does will actually do anything here. What little we hope to influence can really happen by telling the truth. That's it. That's all that we can do from the sidelines. Now, the conclusion that I'm coming to is that really the only way to affect this outcome, this war, and even beyond that, any of these political issues that we discuss on this show and elsewhere, the only way to affect it, which, look, I understand this sounds simple and stupid, but this is the conclusion that I've come to. The only way to do that is from a position of power, position of influence. Okay, no amount of protesting or voting can fix this. Trump ran on this platform. He had millions of people backing him, saying that they will not go into war with Iran. And yet he did it anyways. One of the more significant populist movements to date in the 21st century, and Trump completely went against their wishes. He basically just told them to fuck off. I'm going to do what I want to do anyways. For one reason or another, whether he's getting influenced by the Israel lobby, maybe they have something on him, nobody really knows. Right? So no amount of public sentiment, no amount of pushing the Overton window has done anything to curtail this. The people that have actually decided how this conflict goes down are those with influence, those with political ties to the administration, those with financial backing. The millionaires, the billionaires, that entire echelon. Right? Once again, though Iran is the focus here, this is a general rule that applies to every issue we face. The only way to change these issues is to insert oneself, yourself, into a position of influence, right? Whether that's running for office, becoming financially successful to the tune of millions, joining the deep state, infiltrating from within. Any of these things will actually push the needle. Everything else is just hearsay. Everything else is just window dressing. It doesn't matter. And the other conclusion that I'm slowly coming around to now is that convincing the masses of anything, it is pointless. It is pointless. Right? Look at how these people behave at these protests. And I don't mean at the paid ones. Right? Because those people, they show up, they have an agenda, they have their lines to speak. I mean even the organic protests. Look at how these people behave. Look at how they behave during COVID. People are fighting over toilet paper after hearing a rumor that they were going to run out. Which, mind you, that rumor started in Australia. Okay, Australia, a country which makes like 70% of its own toilet paper, and people fell for that. It was mass hysteria. Shelves were being cleared. My point is, trying to waste any time convincing the masses or the general populace that this needs to be done, it is a waste of effort. There will not be a people's movement, right? A real, quote unquote, a real people's movement that will shift the needle in any significant way. Because once again, they tried it with Trump. And people thought that they had the momentum of history behind them. The man gets shot, right? Gets taken off the ballot, or they try to take him off the ballot in multiple states. He's straight up cussing out the deep state and his political opponents. Right? He's doing all these disruptive things, and yet he still turns around and goes to war with Iran. Why? Because the people behind him, right, the people that are buying his influence, like Miriam Adelson, who donated, I believe it was $250 million to his campaign, people like that actually have the levers of power. They actually pull on the purse strings. They have some influence. And the only way, right, the conclusion that leads me to is the only way to actually affect anything is to be in that realm, to have that amount of influence, to weaponize it in a way, to meet your needs. Not your needs, but to meet your demands, to meet your goals. Right? The only way to win, right, to quote unquote win at this game of changing the world is to make yourself as influential and agentic as possible. A singular focus towards that goal is mission critical. Otherwise, you're just a spectator. Otherwise, you're just another Anon writing shit posts and working yourself up in your free time and spinning in your wage cage until you drop dead of an aneurysm at the age of 40. And I understand that this show is in some ways, right, just me sitting in a microphone and talking about this, but there's some things in the work at the Whitepill Project. Right? I'm working on expanding my sphere of influence. This is all a part of it. And at the end of the day, look, if you're not convinced, the one thing that should convince you is that you owe it to the world to try to get into that position. You know, it's nice and all to get together with your friends and to talk shit about this and go to the bar or whatever and just air out your complaints and your grievances, but it goes nowhere. No amount of writing, of publishing books, like none of it doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't actually produce real results. Because then we just wake up the next day, we see all the headlines on X, and these things are being done with or without our consent. Right? In the exact same vein as I'll get into later in this show about MAiD, right? How many people in Canada actually voted for medically assisted suicide? How many people are actually in support of this? I'd wager it's actually very few. I'd wager that it's actually very few people that are okay with state-sanctioned, or rather state-sponsored suicide. And yet it's a policy. It's a policy that's on track to kill 100,000 Canadians this year. right? Since its inception. And how many of us voted for this? Who actually wanted this? And yet here we are. Because right now, all we can do in our current position with this show is talk about it. But as I said before, there is work being done to put this in a more advantageous position, to put this energy in a more focused light so that we actually do something. So that I can actually do something. Because I'll tell you this much. I've been talking about these things, whether it's the political machinations of America or Canada for years and years and years with the closest friends, and I'm tired of it not leading anywhere. I'm sick and tired of just being in this loop of being caught with my pants down, essentially, when one of these things happen, when the COVID mandates happen, right? And people have to make that choice between their job, their livelihood, or their medical independence and freedom. And after going through something like that, I will never, for as long as I live, be put in a position like that ever again. And I will do everything in my power to make it so. So anyways, yeah, I wanted to get that out of the way. Once again, just yet another reminder. The only way to influence these things, the only way to actually affect any real change is to put yourself in a position of power and influence. To actually push the needle on history. Otherwise, everything else it's just window dressing. It's just hot air. You're just blowing smoke. There has to be a definitive, focused set of goals to achieve. Some heights to aspire to. We have to do this. Otherwise, we're letting the fucking lunatics run the insane asylum. That's what this is. That's exactly what this is. And even if we get someone in power that says the right things, that says, I will support you and fight for you and your ideals, I recognize you when the world has forgotten you, like Trump did for those 3 campaigns that he ran, this is still the end result. He just turns around and does whatever the fuck he wants. And I'm sick and tired of that. I'm sick and tired of being misled like this. So without further ado, let's get into a lighter topic of medically assisted, state-sponsored suicide. Now, for those who don't know, Canada has this program by the name of MAiD, M-A-I-D, which is defined in federal law as medical assistance provided by a physician or a nurse practitioner to intentionally end a person's life at their request, either by A, directly administering the drugs, which is in most cases, or B, prescribing or providing the drugs for self-administration, which is a little bit more rare. Now, MAiD was something that's been on the fringes of the Canadian healthcare system for years now, but now it's become a major component of our end-of-life care landscape. Right, in 2022 alone, there was 13,000 or so MAiD deaths, which accounted for about 4% of all deaths that year in Canada. And by the end of 2024, there's been a total of about 76,000 people that have died through MAiD, which is about 5% of all deaths that year. 76,000 people. 76,000. In 2 years, we had an increase of 60,000 more deaths. Right? And the government of Canada, they like to do us this favor of releasing this report every single year, the link to which will obviously be in the show notes, which is in every single episode. They like to release a report every single year, which, first of all, why is this only done once a year? Why is something as vital as this receiving a yearly update like their fucking patch notes? Why is it only once a year? Something as critical as this should be updated every single month. Every single month. In a perfect world, I would want to have these stats every single day. But obviously, the government can't work that quick. We can't expect them to. At the least, they owe us updates every single month. The fact that this is done every single year is insane, because then it takes a year to collect all that data, for us to see all these trends, right? Do this whole analysis, all this breakdown that they do. But realistically, this should be done every single month. Every single month. It's nothing short of insane. And I even checked, like, if maybe an access to information request can actually provide this, and at least according to this AI, it says no. There's some provinces that, publish more granular MAiD statistics, like Quebec. They release their monthly figures, which means it's possible. It's certainly possible for all provinces to do this. It doesn't make sense why we don't subscribe to that, especially if our tax dollars are paying for people to be able to kill themselves. It's nothing short of insane. Now, the requirements for MAiD, which have been a hotly contested topic for a while now, but the requirements for them, just across the board, is that you have to be at least 18, capable of making your own health decisions, be eligible for publicly funded health services in Canada, that you make this request voluntarily and not due to external pressure, that you have to give informed consent after being informed of the options, including palliative care, so end-of-life care, and all the other supports, and that you have a, quote, grievous and irremediable medical condition, meaning that it's either a serious and incurable illness, disease, or disability, which, excluding for now mental illness as the sole condition, meaning that in 2027, right, there's a timeline on this. In 2027, by then, it's going to be possible for people to ask and request MAiD if they are just depressed or if they have a mental illness. And we've actually already seen a couple of deaths in the news because people have had, I think one that I saw, a man had seasonal depression. I think he was like 22 years old or something. Some guy in Ontario who he couldn't get approved for MAiD in Ontario, so he went to BC and he got it approved. And his parents spoke out and they said, this is not at all what we wanted. Yeah, he was dealing with some issues, but it's not something that he couldn't have bounced back from. Right? So even though they say that mental illness is not technically a category for MAiD right now, why is it that we're seeing these news stories of people saying that they have mental illness and they're allowed to get MAiD? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it does when you think about it, because clearly the program is more lenient than we expected. Because once again, it's one thing for you to have brain cancer or any deadly form of cancer that is making your life unbearable. It's one thing for you to be a quadriplegic, right? Or someone that needs assistance in round-the-clock care. But it's another thing if you just have seasonal depression, or if you have bipolar disorder, or any of these other things, right? Things that are a little bit more insurmountable. You got all four limbs? Can you work? Right? Can you walk and talk and breathe? Well, that's a little bit of a different qualifier than, actually like needing bed rest 24/7. In any case, back to the categories that are acceptable for MAiD. It also includes an advanced state of irreversible decline in capability, or enduring physical or psychological suffering that is intolerable and cannot be relieved under conditions acceptable to the person. Now, the mental illness thing that I mentioned, the deadline for that would be March 17th, 2027. And it says here, people whose sole medical condition is a mental illness, so your only condition is mental illness, they are explicitly excluded from MAiD eligibility until next March. And that was actually supposed to expire, I believe, 2 years ago, but they changed the date, which thank God they did. Because if we're on track to have 100,000 people die just this year alone, right, with this extended deadline, I couldn't imagine how many there would have been had this been actually shorter. Now, the way that it goes down, right, the process of getting MAiD, is that a patient usually raises it, right, the request for MAiD with either their physician or nurse practitioner, and the provider has to ensure that the person understands all the other options, whether it's counseling, mental health supports, disability supports, community services, palliative care, and they have to offer consultations with all these services where applicable. Now, the person who completes this MAiD request form, signed in front of one independent witness, right, it formalizes the request. They have to have somebody that's actually overseeing the signing of all this. So this isn't happening in isolated incidents. There are other people involved. And then 2 independent physicians or nurse practitioners must each assess the person and confirm that all eligibility criteria are met. Now, independent does not mean that they are, independent means that they are not in a supervisory relationship with each other, they're not beneficiaries of the patient's estate, and they don't have conflicts of interest. Now, there's 2 tracks for this. The first one, right, the first track of MAiD, there is no minimum reflection period, which originally there was a 10-day waiting period, which was removed by Bill C-7. And that final consent must normally be confirmed immediately before MAiD, but can be waived if the person is approved at risk of losing capacity and has signed a written agreement with the provider. And then track 2, you have to wait at least 90 days minimum from the start of the first assessment to the provision, so to the actual operation or to the procedure, unless both assessors agree that imminent loss of decision-making capability justifies shortening once eligibility assessments are complete. Apologies if this sounds robotic. A lot of this is written off of the government pages. So the way that they write this, it's very clinical. But let me just go down here. Okay, regarding documentation, the MAiD provider must document eligibility assessments, consent, discussions of alternatives, and the procedure itself in the medical record, complying with federal MAiD monitoring regulations and provincial reporting requirements. The provider completes the medical certificate of death, typically listing the underlying condition as the cause of death with a notation that the death occurred via MAiD. Insurers are required to treat MAiD as a natural death, which is interesting because it's not a natural death. Killing yourself is not a natural death. It's the furthest thing from it. Natural death means your body shuts down. So I'm not exactly sure why insurers are required to treat it as a natural death. In any case, sorry, this topic is just so disheartening. Not ideal for a for a Tuesday morning. The whole reason that this came to pass was that in 2015 there was a Supreme Court case which challenged some criminal code sections that made it illegal for someone to help end their life or be able to consent to their own death. And the idea was, right, once this went to the Supreme Court, is that this bill, it was meant to respect patient autonomy and relieve suffering, protect vulnerable persons from being induced to die in moments of weakness, and establish a stringent, limited, carefully monitored system of exceptions. Now, this doesn't seem to be at all the case. This does not seem to be the case. How is it that we're on track to have 100,000 people die using this service, and yet they're talking that there has to be an established, quote, stringently limited, carefully monitored system of exceptions? That seems to be like a lot of exceptions. 100,000 people, that might not be a lot to an American, but to a Canadian, right? We only have less than just under 40 million people in this nation. 100,000, that's not an insignificant amount of people. That's more than most small towns. Way more than most small towns. I mean, we're on track to lose more people this year from MAiD alone, right, since the program's inception, than we lost during World War II. That is nothing short of insane. And once again, we are paying for it. We are paying for it. Because MAiD is treated as an insured health service, right? Patients don't pay to request or receive MAiD, and all the medications used are covered by provincial health plans. Right? For instance, Nova Scotia's health authority explicitly states that there is no fee and that MAiD medications are covered under the provincial plan, whether provisions occur at home or in a facility. Physicians, it says here, physicians and nurse practitioners bill provincial plans using existing or specific MAiD-related fee codes for assessments and consultations, case conferencing and counseling, travel time, and the MAiD procedure itself. Now, the twisted thing about the way that this program is set up financially is that part of the, and I hate to use this word, but part of the appeal for MAiD, right? Part of the reason why it seems, at least from my understanding, why it seems to be something that some provinces are so gung-ho for, or the federal government is so gung-ho for, is that it saves money on palliative care. You know, because what's cheaper? Giving somebody a one-time injection or a couple of pills to kill themselves with, right? And some consultations with the doctors, maybe travel fees to get to the facility, right? The cost of that, how does that weigh against the cost of end-of-life care or care for the rest of your life? Whether it's medication that you have to be on, therapy that you have to go to, physical or otherwise, palliative care, that you have to have bed rest, that you have to have a nurse looking after you every single day. Now, apparently, they ran an estimate of this in 2017. It estimated that MAiD could reduce annual Canadian healthcare spending from anywhere between $35 to $140 million, which compared to the MAiD program cost at the time was anywhere between $1.5 to about $15 million. So MAiD is not only cost neutral, but that it's actually cost saving in the aggregate. In 2020, they projected that for 2021, with the 6,000 MAiD deaths under the then current law, they yielded a gross reduction in end-of-life care costs of about $110 million. Meanwhile, the program only costed about $20 million. So the net reduction was about $80 or so million. This is insane. This is insane. We are treating healthcare, right? Government-assisted suicide as a cost-saving measure. How the fuck did we get here as a nation where that is not only something that is even spoken of, right, in the public sphere, in the halls of power, in the House of Commons, but that it was actually enacted. We live in this reality now. Thousands of people are dying across Canada every single month. They are choosing to end their lives. And for the reasons that we'll get into, these are not, once again, these are not all people that are quadriplegic, that are end of life, they got brain cancer. No. Quite a few of these cases are controversial, and these are the only ones that we've heard about. I guarantee you there's plenty more that just haven't had the wherewithal, maybe the courage, maybe, for one reason or another, they haven't come to the news for it. Because some of this stuff is actually just absolutely disgusting. But before we get into that, here's some more details, right? Because you think, okay, so somebody decides to commit MAiD, what other benefits might the government reap? How about organ donation? Right, it says here that the Canadian Institute for Health Information reported that in 2024, Of the 890 deceased organ donors nationwide, 29%, 29% of these organ donations, so about a third, were after circulatory death. Oh, my apologies, not 29%, 7% were donors following MAiD. Almost 10%. Almost 10%. In 2021, Canada accounted for nearly half of these transplants, of global transplants. Globally. We accounted for almost half of these transplants from medically assisted suicide. The highest rate among the 4 countries that are actually known for this, which is Belgium, Netherlands, and Spain. They also have a medically assisted suicide program. So now there's a pipeline for the government, right, for our healthcare system, because that is the government, to receive organs from people who commit suicide. Yet another incentive for this program to be expanded. Not only do we save money, but we get organs for the organ donor list. Like, really? This is where we're at now? This is what we're doing? This is the kind of policy that we're supporting? You know, the funny thing is, I haven't heard the Conservatives come out and say anything against this. That headline that was making its rounds like a couple of weeks ago regarding the 100,000 deaths that we're supposed to record by this year. Where are the Conservatives on this? Why are they not saying anything? I mean, this is nothing short of insane. This should be on the front page of every single newspaper. Hey, fuckface, your tax dollars are making it so that people can kill themselves at an alarmingly increasing rate. And some of that money, right, some of that money is being used to fund that same program that is saving the Canadian healthcare system tens of millions of dollars, soon to be hundreds of millions of dollars. Because now we no longer need to hire nurse practitioners, we no longer need to supply them with drugs for the rest of their life, therapies for the rest of their life. It's just much easier if they kill themselves. It's fucking disgusting. It is a travesty that we even have this kind of program in Canada. Words fail me here. Words fail me here. I just, I once again, you know, I come back to what I was saying, but before the Iran war, I'm sitting here, right, just kind of talking in circles in a way, just talking to this microphone, talking to this camera, and God knows how many listeners are actually going to hear this, right? But I'm sitting here frustrating myself to no end that Canada has this program, that we pay for this program, that we enable people to take their own lives, and that this saves us money. And then it also saves the struggle of finding organs to donate. And nothing is going to happen. No amount of voting, no amount of protesting, no amount of podcasts or series is going to do anything to stop this. The only way is to position yourself in a position of influence. That is the only way. That is quite literally like the only way to fix this. There is nothing else that can be done. Because look, this is nice and all. I might get some clips, you know, might get some views, sure. But this program is going to keep going until somebody put a stops to it. And it has to be stopped. Right? And I'll highlight some cases here exactly why it has to be stopped. Because some of the people that are going for this program, right, as it keeps expanding, as in 2027, as I mentioned earlier, they're going to expand it to include it so that you can actually just have a singular mental illness be used as the justification for medically assisted suicide. And notice that they call it medical assistance in death. Because that's not death. Death is getting struck by a bus. Death is getting shot in the street. Death is getting into an accident. That is death, right? Or having your body decompose on you. This is suicide. You are taking your life. You are taking your life. Okay, this isn't death. This is suicide. This is a whole other category in and of itself. But they want to dress it up in this flowery language, or at least try to mitigate some of the negativity around it, some of the stigma. But this should be stigmatized. This should not be normal. I shouldn't have to be sitting here and talking about this. Nobody should have to even write articles about this. We shouldn't even be here in the first place, and yet we are. Once again, because the people that actually oppose this, they are not in a position of power, they are not in a position of influence, they are powerless. They cannot do anything. All we can do is sit here and shout to the heavens and hope that somebody hears. But that does nothing. That does nothing. So let's get into some examples. Right? Why is it so controversial if it's only treating, right, the worst of the worst of the worst? Why is it so controversial? Why is MAiD so controversial if it's literally meant for people that are at the end of life? Right? Because that's the assumption, is that why would anyone that's otherwise healthy use this program? Well, I'll tell you. There was a case not too long ago where a 51-year-old Ontario woman with severe multiple chemical sensitivities, right? She lived in social housing where smoke and cleaning products triggered debilitating symptoms. And after a 2-year unsuccessful attempt with support from doctors and advocates to secure affordable low chemical housing, she was approved for MAiD and died on February 22nd, 2022. Her final messages said she felt treated as, quote, expendable trash. Expendable trash. This is the note that she left us with. This woman, the long story short, this woman lived in an apartment block, socialized housing, which I believe was funded by the Salvation Army, where they used these cleaning agents in the halls. There was a lot of cigarette smoke in her apartment from her neighbors, and she had some sensitivities that just it made it unbearable for her, right? And so she pleaded this to her doctors, to advocacy groups. Right, here's a quote from this article. She died after a frantic effort by friends, supporters, and even her doctors to get her safe and affordable housing in Toronto. She also left behind letters showing a desperate 2-year search for help, in which she begs local, provincial, and federal officials for assistance in finding a home away from the smoke and chemicals wafting through her apartment. All it would have done to save her is an apartment in some high-rise in a decent area of Toronto. That's all she needed. She didn't need round-the-clock care. She didn't need any of that. She just needed a decent place to live. That's all she needed. And her life was so bad, she considered her life so bad that she thought that killing herself was the only option. She just couldn't handle living in that apartment. Now, look, this condition, MCS, the multiple chemical sensitivities, there's some controversy around it, like whether it's real. It's kind of like long COVID in some ways. But look, at the end of the day, if this woman can't even afford to move to a more decent place where they aren't using these harsh chemicals, where there isn't just cigarette smoke billowing through the hallways, which in some areas of Toronto, it's more common than you think. But in her current state, with the way that the economy was during 2022, right, because this is still during COVID, all she needed was an apartment, and she couldn't even get that, a decent apartment that wasn't socialized housing, and a job that could support that kind of a lifestyle. Oh, you can't afford to move out? Guess you got to kill yourself. You can't afford to live in a decent place where there isn't toxic fumes pervading the hallway. Guess you gotta kill yourself. Here's another quote from the article. Letters she wrote said that indoor cigarette and pot smoking increased, sending fumes through her Scarborough apartment building's ventilation system. More chemical cleaners were used in the hallways that worsened her symptoms. She confined herself to her bedroom, or dungeon as she called it, for most of the pandemic, sealing the vents to keep cigarette and pot smoke from wafting into her unit. Which, my God, man, even in the building that I live in, I'll still, like, if I'm in the bathroom, I will smell that shit. Just have the common decency to go out, man. It's not hard to just step outside for a smoke or just use a nicotine patch. Fucking vape. Literally do anything else. Why are you smoking indoors? Insane. Insane behavior. Here's another quote. My landlord does not believe anything is wrong with me and refuses to do anything else to help me with regards to making this apartment safe for me to live. I've given up hope and have applied for and now qualify for MAiD. How does this qualify her for MAiD? How is this not a disqualifying case? There is all she needs is an apartment. All she needs is a job. That's all she needs. Something as simple as that. 2 jobs, fuck it, whatever. A woman in her 50s will still plenty life to live. And yet, she got approved for MAiD? I mean, just reading these stories, it's so fucking heartbreaking. I can't believe that I live in a country where this is acceptable. Where instead of being able to support yourself on a single income, I understand Toronto is unique in its unaffordability compared to other cities, but Jesus fucking Christ, couldn't even find a decent place to live. And part of it, once again, because we let in so many Indians, so many immigrants, that the housing market, especially during that time, was squeezed to the point of breaking almost. And people had no choice, especially in her position. Because God knows what her resume is like. God knows what her qualifiers are like. What work experience she's had. She certainly doesn't sound like a CEO or some executive. Probably just does like remedial labor, working at a grocery store, pushing the carts or at the cashier. Or maybe she just didn't have a job at all because she wasn't able to find one. Who knows? There's so many details of the story that are unknown. But this is just one story. This is just one story. There are hundreds of these, if not thousands. Here's another story of a 31-year-old disabled woman who is on ODSP, which is the Ontario Social Services Program. So basically disability benefits. Who said she applied for MAiD, quote, essentially because of abject poverty after failing to find wheelchair-accessible low-chemical housing she could afford. On about $1,169 a month plus small supplements. Yeah, good luck finding anything in Toronto for that. And also wheelchair-accessible? Good fucking luck. It says here, physicians publicly said what she needed was safe housing, not MAiD. After media coverage, donors raised tens of thousands of dollars and she was relocated, leading her to pause her MAiD plans. Once again, all she needed was just a leg up. That's all she needed. All she needed was just an opportunity to work, to provide for herself. All she needed was that. And the moment that she got it, she rescinded her MAiD application. It's crazy. It is. I know I keep saying that. I realize it's overplayed, and it's just I gotta stop using that word. But I can't, because it's nothing short of insane that we live in this country. We live in this country where if you are poor enough, right? If you're poor enough, your only option then, right? If you don't want to wind up homeless, is to kill yourself. And of course, the media is gonna frame this, quote, woman with disabilities approved for medically assisted death, relocated thanks to inspiring support. Wow, how inspiring. So inspiring. My goodness. So inspiring. All this woman needed was a chance to just be a person. And she got lucky. Right? She got lucky. The GoFundMe that they set up for her got 65,000 in donations from nearly 1,000 people. 65,000 donations. How many people have this opportunity? How many people can get the airtime from the media that allows them to do this? It's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. You feel for these people. You really do. Yeah, I don't know. I find it unacceptable. I can't believe that we live in a country as rich as Canada, as resource rich, technologically rich, financially we're pretty well off. Like, look, yeah, the cost of living is fucking insane and rent is high and all that. Yes, sure, but Canada is not a poor country. Okay, we have plenty of infrastructure. We have a semi functioning government when they choose to function. A system of laws, a justice system, which may be imperfect, but it functions, right? And yet we have people that if they live in abject poverty, their only option besides the streets is to kill themselves. They have no leg up. And there was a case that I'll bring up, case of MAiD during or due to seasonal depression. There was a case where a 20-something. Oh my God, really? Fucking grok. Case of MAiD due to seasonal depression. There was a gentleman in his 20s, which, as I said, he applied for MAiD in Ontario. 26-year-old man from Ontario who died by MAiD on December 30th, 2025 in British Columbia. Didn't even see the new year. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 4, suffered partial vision loss, blindness in one eye following complications, including from a car accident at 17, experienced recurring mental health struggles, including depression. His family states that he dealt with ADHD, substance abuse, nerve pain, and overall emotional and anger challenges tied to his condition. And he became, quote unquote, obsessed with MAiD after his vision loss in 2022, pursuing it multiple times. Doctors in Ontario rejected his request in recent years, reportedly deeming him ineligible. He then traveled to British Columbia, where he was approved under Track 2 provisions for grievous and irremediable conditions where natural death is not reasonably foreseeable, but intolerable suffering exists. Intolerable suffering? I mean, look, it sounds like he's got a pretty rough life, and I'm not passing judgment here in that sense. It's not my place to say whether he had a rough life, but the guy wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't crippled. He still had a chance to live his life. And apparently his family says that he may have even been coached on framing his symptoms to qualify, and they learned of his death only afterward. Only after he died. Now, MAiD was not only granted solely for mental illness, right, but based on this combination of chronic physical conditions. The diabetes, which, look, diabetes is considered a condition? Are you fucking kidding me? How is diabetes considered a legitimate condition here? It's diabetes. It's treatable. We have the medication. The vision loss? Okay, so should every blind person in Canada be able to kill themselves? And the pain? There's millions of people dealing with chronic pain every single day. No, this isn't the article I wanted. Where is it? Though I think this one might be of a different case. Yeah, this is another one, I believe. Oh, no. This is the same one. Yeah, vision loss from diabetes. And his family's come out and said what the actual fuck? They didn't even know that their own son died until after the fact. This program needs to be ripped out of the legal code. It needs to be thrown in a dungeon to never be seen again. And anyone that's supporting this program needs to be put on some kind of a fucking watch list. And I don't mean like general support, I mean like the actual practitioners. Because some of these people, right, once again, they come from the school of leftism. They come at MAiD with all these opinions. And it'll make sense. This claim that I'm making, it'll make sense in a minute with what I'm about to show you. But this should not be a lived reality in Canada. If you are dealing with some issue, whether it's mental, physical, or what have you, in a country as rich as Canada, you should have all the supports available to you in order to treat it, in order to deal with it, to live with it. Suicide should not even be something that is contemplated, let alone supported by taxpayer dollars. Every single day, as I've said before on the show, living in Canada, it's like a fever dream. You wake up every single day and there's just this new headline that makes you scratch your head thinking, how the fuck did we get here? How the fuck did we get to the point where this is acceptable? Where a man that otherwise would have been able to lead a decently healthy, productive life. Yes, he's got some disabilities, but plenty of Canadians do. Plenty of Canadians do, and they still are just going at it. They're still waking up. They're going to work. They're seeing their friends. They're seeing their family. They're meeting people. They're working. They're providing for themselves, for their community. They have a meaningful life ahead of them. And it's snuffed out. Because I guess here we decide that this is just perfectly normal. This is what we're willing to tolerate. I mean, mind you, okay, here's the other thing. This issue hasn't come up on the campaign trail at all. Nobody wants to touch this issue. Nobody. In Canada, it's seen as some taboo subject, even though, we are funding it. We need to have a national level conversation on this. Our political leaders need to actually do something, and the people that hold the levers of power beyond the politics need to step in and make it known that this is not okay. That this is not what Canada is about. We cannot, as a country, exist, right, in this idea of a friendly and polite Canada, where we are the peacekeepers of the world. Right, our socialized systems are the envy of the world. You can't have that narrative and then also have record high amounts of people within your country killing themselves through state-sponsored suicide. You can't have the two. It's either one or the other. And so once again, Canada just feels like a fever dream because you wake up and you see this headline and you're like, how the fuck? This is the least Canadian thing there could be. Life is suffering. Okay, that's what life is. Life is suffering with brief moments of happiness or neutrality, but life is suffering. That's what it is. And you should not be seeking suicide as a way out. Now, once again, there is an exception to be made for people that are like completely end of life care. There is no saving them. They're in pain 24/7. Right, the brain cancer has spread to all parts of their body or what have you. There is an argument to be made there. Or if you get into a car crash, right, and now you're just living on a feeding tube, there is an argument to be made there. But for this? For diabetes? For vision loss? Depression? You persevere. You persevere despite those things. Never, ever commit suicide. Never. Because the destruction that you leave in your wake, the pieces of your life, the rest of us have to pick those up and keep going. The rest of us have to make sense of the world when you're gone. And it's impossible to replace that. I'm by no means speaking from personal experience, but suicide should not be an option you entertain unless you are absolutely at the end of your life, well into your 70s, 80s, what have you, or if there is literally no other way. But if it just means that you need a better apartment, you need a new lease on life, God, you're better off just being an alcoholic at that point, or taking up any drug addiction just to make life palatable, if that's what it means for you to be alive. And look, I'm half joking when I say that. Okay, I'm not saying that suicidal people need to to start injecting themselves with mystery fluids. But suicide it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem 90% of the time. 99% of the time. It leaves a hole that cannot be replaced. For mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers, for the nation, for the community, for your school, for your job, for what have you. Suicide is never the answer. Never. And the fact that as a country we fund state-sanctioned suicide, or rather state-assisted suicide, it's nothing short of disgusting. This is morally reprehensible work. The longer I live in Canada, the more I become disappointed with just how far we've fallen asleep at the wheel. Because we let this happen. We let this happen. I have yet to see a single movement or protest or any kind of action being taken to stop this program. The people in the halls of power seem to be just ignoring this. You know, this story only dropped like a month ago or so. And what has happened as a result of it? We got Matt Walsh and some other political commentators coming out against it. But nothing has actually happened as a result. It's beyond disappointing. Disappointing isn't even the word for it. You know, there was even a case. I can't believe I just remembered this. This is another case of woman in Western Canada who wanted to commit MAiD until an American radio host stepped in. This was at the peak of or around the peak of the elbows up movement. And this story is incredible. There's a woman by the name of Jolene Van Alstyne. She was a 45-year-old woman living in Regina, Saskatchewan, who had been suffering for about 8 years or so from a rare but treatable parathyroid disease. This condition caused her severe chronic pain, nausea, vomiting, and other debilitating symptoms, right? Leaving her largely bedridden and isolated. Now, due to long delays and bureaucratic hurdles in accessing the specialized surgery she needed within Canada's public healthcare system, her MAiD application was approved relatively quickly. She was reportedly scheduled for assisted dying in early January 2026 as she felt there was no viable path to relief or treatment. Now, the story gained attention when her partner, Miles Sundin, appeared on, or rather shared, the details of her story with the talk host, the conservative talk host, Glenn Beck. He learned about the situation live on the air from his co-host, and he decided to step in. He publicly committed to funding her travel, to the United States for the necessary surgery. He tried to connect her with willing surgeons and tried to cover her costs related to the procedure to help her avoid MAiD. Now, at the time when this happened, a lot of people were up in arms. A lot of commentators and people as part of the Elbows Up crowd, they were like, wow, fuck this American, fuck Glenn Beck, this conservative Trumpist. Fuck him. Unbelievable. He's using her as a political prop. He's using her to push for his own agenda. Which, my God, a woman's life is at stake here. Like, did anyone really give a shit about the woman? Right? The CBC covered this. And this is how they started the article, okay? This is, once again, you can't, okay? You can't hate the media enough. Quote, an international policy expert says an American pundit's recent commentary on a Regina woman's medical situation is a distraction from the real issues in Canada's healthcare system. Glenn Beck, former Fox News host and current owner of far-right news site The Blaze, posted on X this week that he wants to help connect Jolene Van Alstyne, who says she has struggled for years to access specialized surgery for a rare disease, with doctors in the U.S. Tom McIntosh, a professor of politics and international studies at the University of Regina who focuses on health policy, says Canadians should not allow political posturing to draw their attention from the real problems. Quote, whatever kind of foolish opportunism that Glenn Beck is demonstrating for his own purposes, we, I think, should try not to be distracted by that. Yeah. Yeah, methinks so. Okay, I think I'm in agreement here. Because a lot of people on X at the time were coming out and saying, oh my God, he's using us as a political prop. Dude, our healthcare system is so bad that an American has to step in and bail us out. What does that say for Canada? What does that say for Canada? And thankfully, she's alive now. I can't believe it. I can't believe that this is what it takes. This is what it takes to save a life. Our system is so inept. Our system is so inept here in Canada. Our healthcare system is so fucking bad that a woman's only choice, because it would have taken too long for her to wait for the specialized help that she needed, was to have an American save her. Let me see if I can find... There's a clip where she's talking to the Premier of Saskatchewan, I believe it was, where she said, we're doing everything we can to help. Let me see if I can find that footage. No, I don't want to get copyright struck by Global News. Come on. All right, let's grok it. Find me the clip of asking the Premier for help. Because I remember there was a clip where she was like just basically pleading with her, please help me. Oh, I guess I'm not going to be able to find it. Is this it? Is this where she finally met her? I'm not going to be able to find it. In any case, she wasn't able to get help in Canada. Our healthcare system is so shit that she was lucky enough to have her story picked up by a benevolent benefactor in the U.S. I mean, if that is not just putting Canada to a T of where we are as a nation, that we can't even look after our own people and we have to rely on the U.S. for help, I don't know what is. I really don't. It's nothing short of incredible that this is where we're at as a nation. Insane. Nothing short of insane. There's also a case. This is more infamous. There was a excuse me. I believe it's this one. There was a Paralympian that was offered medical assistant suicide. Somebody that had served their nation, right, in the army, and then went on to become an athlete in the Paralympics because she was disabled due to her service, was offered MAiD after she was just requesting a wheelchair lift in her house. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, Christine Gauthier, a Canadian military veteran and former Paralympic athlete who suffered a severe back and spinal injury during a training incident in 1989 while serving the Canadian Armed Forces. And for years between 2017 and 2019, she began fighting with Veterans Affairs of Canada to obtain home accessibility modifications, specifically a wheelchair lift, in her home to help her move between floors more safely and independently. She described having to awkwardly carry or maneuver her wheelchair down the stairs to leave the house, which is physically challenging and dangerous. In 2019, a VAC caseworker, so the Veterans Affairs Canada caseworker, responded to her request that if she was so desperate due to her situation that they could offer her medical assistance in dying and provide the necessary equipment for it. So you serve your country, right? You do your time, you become a Paralympian representing the nation on the world stage. And instead of getting the help that you're requesting from your government, just a basic chairlift installed in your home, you get recommended suicide. And this is years ago, mind you. This isn't like now when the program has expanded and there's tens of thousands of additional deaths. No. This is in the beginning. This is within like 2 years of that same court case that I mentioned earlier. Of MAiD coming into fruition. 2 years in, and this is what we're recommending. God, it is just what a fucking disgrace. Absolutely fucking embarrassing. Canada is a humiliation ritual. I saw somebody post the other day saying that living in Canada feels like you got reincarnated here specifically because of some grave sins that you commit in your past life, and now you're here to atone for them. That's what it feels like. That's exactly what it feels like. I mean, my God, could you imagine how she felt in that moment being offered medically assisted suicide? Could you imagine like what the operator was thinking? How could they do that? How could that in any way be a conscionable recommendation? It's nothing short of insane. I don't know. Words fail me here. Words fail me here, as they often do on this show. I can't believe that this is our new reality. This is what we're doing. And like I said, this was being done almost a decade ago. Almost a decade ago. And here we are in 2026 and the program is only expanding. It's only expanding. Here's another article from 4 years ago. Quote, RCMP called to investigate multiple cases of veterans being offered medically assisted death. Our veterans, the people that laid down their lives for this country. They're getting recommended medically assisted death instead of getting the service and help that they need. Quote, 4, perhaps even 5 Canadian military veterans were given the option of medically assisted death by a now suspended Veteran Affairs Canada caseworker, the country's veterans minister told a House of Commons committee late Thursday. Lawrence Macaulay said the matter is now being turned over to the RCMP for investigation and his department's internal review is ongoing. Now, whatever internal reviews they do, if this is the business as usual, right, the part of the training that Veteran Affairs Canada goes through, this problem isn't going away. Right? This issue is going to keep cropping up so long as MAiD exists as an option. Because clearly the people at the Veteran Affairs Committee, right, they have something in their training that tells them, hey, by the way, if they raise enough of such and such concerns, you could always offer MAiD to them. I don't think that worker was just sitting there on the phone thinking, oh, this would probably be a nice option to recommend them. No. It's part of their training. It's part of their training. It's absolutely fucking disgusting. Of all the people to do this to the veterans? Insane. It's nothing short of insane. The point of all this, right? The point of the show today, once again, it's not just to highlight the absurdity of MAiD as a program. Although that is something that is worth highlighting because this needs to be repealed. This needs to be destroyed. This program should not exist. It really shouldn't. Because, and controversial though it may be, if you want to kill yourself, right? If there's no other options, which once again, never commit suicide. But if somebody is actually going to do that, if somebody is going to go through with that, why is it the burden on the rest of us to not only have to fund it, but to have to support it? Why is it on the burden of every single other Canadian to have to pay for this, right? To have to pay for these programs for veterans to get recommended this? Why is the burden on us? If somebody's going to make that decision, right, the ultimate decision to end their life, why are we, the rest of us, forced to pick up the bill for it? Why does this have to be the case? It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense for us to be doing this because at the end of the day, this is just kneecapping Canada. We are offering this service, for lack of a better word, because I'm struggling to find the right words for this, but we are offering this service to more and more people every year. We're on track to reach our 100,000 MAiD death this year alone. And where does it end? If this program keeps expanding, what is the upper limit? Are we going to see that number double in the next couple of years? Because we've already seen it increase fucking almost tenfold. Right? What was that number again? In, what is it, in 2022 or 2020, it was like 7,000? Where is it? Where's that number? 6,000 deaths. 6,500 by 2020. And we're almost on track to reach 100,000 in 6 years' time. In 6 years' time. Can you imagine what that increase even looks like? Going from 6 to 100,000 people by this year? This should be ringing alarm bells for everybody involved. Not just the government, but the populace at large. We can't accept this as the status quo. We can't. It's unconscionable. And let me play you a little tidbit here. This is this is an interesting one. Give this one a listen, why don't you?
Supports and services allow, promote.
Oh, apologies, 1 second.
Supports and services for people with mental disorders. All the various things that that bring about socioeconomic vulnerability. Parliament has an obligation to do those two things at the same time. Don't hold individuals' rights hostage to Parliament's failure to promote mental health supports and services, disability supports and services. Do them both. I think that's your responsibility, is to do both at the same time. And to know, and when you're answering back to your constituents, is to be able to tell them that these are not the drivers of MAiD. People who are getting MAiD are actually very, very privileged. They're white. They're well off. They're highly educated. They're not in institutions. They have families. So the picture of it is one of privilege. And so it doesn't mean we don't want to look after the people who are vulnerable. Sorry.
Thank you. I just got a couple of minutes left.
Sorry about that.
Ms. Watson, I'd like to turn to you. You know, my riding has a very high Indigenous population.
The people getting MAiD are often white and privileged. I like that she had to point that out. And this is Dr. Jocelyn Downey, a Trudeau Foundation Fellow and MAiD advocate, saying that euthanasia recipients are, quote, very privileged, white, well-off, highly educated, which she used as justification to argue that expanding access to mental illness without delaying it would offer better supports to the people in need. This is where we are as a nation. This right here. This is where we are. Is this the kind of country we want to have as Canadians? Are we okay with this? Are we okay with 100,000 people in less than a decade killing themselves? Not only killing themselves, but killing themselves and having us foot the bill for it. Killing themselves and saving money in the healthcare system. Killing themselves and supplying the organ donor system. Are we okay with this? Are you enraged yet? Because I sure as hell am. No. This has to end. Full stop. This must end. As I've said before on this show, our way of life is untenable. We are at a precipice. We are at a breaking point. If we do not reverse course, things are only going to get worse. We are only going to see more assisted suicide deaths, people that are in poverty, seeking medically assisted suicide. There's a number of stories that I've yet to show here because, frankly, there are just too many. I mean, look, if I just look through my notes here, okay, and these will be released obviously at every single show. Look at these controversial cases that I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 other poverty and support gap stories that involve MAiD as an option. These include multiple stories, veterans affairs, questionable eligibility. 10, 11. And these are just the ones that I was able to find on short notice. These are just the ones that I did with some preliminary research using AI to find these articles. Okay? That's not counting the thousands that don't make it to the news, that we don't know about. This program needs to be strangled in the crib. MAiD needs to commit suicide. There is no other way. We cannot have a healthy society with a program like this existing. Full stop. No ifs, ands, or buts. And I'm going to be doing a further deep dive into this topic because I know I didn't touch upon a lot of things in this story today. Today's a bit of a short one because I got to rush off to work in a bit. And I apologize for that, but with this new schedule for streaming, having some difficulty adapting to it. But in any case, look, first and foremost, never commit suicide. Okay? I just want to reiterate that again. Never commit suicide. There are people right now around the world lying in the hospital or in complete destitute conditions, begging for the chance that you have at life. Do not take it for granted. Do not. There is always a way out. Always. And it should not be suicide. Suicide should not even enter your mind as an option. And secondly, in order to put to an end to any of this, whether it's when I started the show with the war in Iran, or the MAiD program in Canada, the only way to put an end to it, right? I understand it's a little bit hypocritical for me to say this, right? I'm fully aware of that. None of this, talking to a microphone or tweeting, none of it is going to stop that. Absolutely none of it. No amount of public sentiment will stop that. Only positioning yourself and encouraging the positioning of others into a position of power to be able to actually pull the levers, to be influential financially, politically, what have you. That is the only way to put a stop to any of this. That is the only way to put a stop to any of this. Everything else is just lip service. And so I, and hopefully you listening, will take that to heart. And when I say hopefully, I mean I am working on doing my best to position myself in that way, and you should too, is what I'm trying to get at. Because at the end of the day, this is untenable. Whether it's with MAiD or with the war in Iran, this way of life, right? The society and the conditions that we find ourselves in, this is not sustainable. And the end result will be catastrophic if we let the powers that be remain in control. And that's my message. Without rambling any further, I'll be on next Wednesday at about 6 or 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You guys can check out the show there. Once again, my co-host and I, Mr. Fireside Talks, will be going over the Freedom Convoy and the final days of it, the legal proceedings that followed, and essentially what was the result of all the court rulings and the cases and whatnot. So we'll be covering that on Wednesday, and then obviously I'll be back on Friday as well to talk. Most likely I'm going to cover Carney's India trip, which happened only last week, which has received like minimal coverage in the news. and will do untold destruction to our nation. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. In any case, as always, if you want to support the stream, go to bio.link/whitepill. Just watch, like, and subscribe on Rumble. That is all the support that I really need. But if you want to take it a step further, you can always send some crypto my way in the first link there with the crypto donations. I don't read chat or any messages or anything like that. So if you want to have your message read, that would be the best way to do it. So without further ado, I thank you each and every one of you for tuning in, and I'll see you guys Wednesday.